709 helps when I learn. I still learn. I can't sign up, but I can sign up. Isn't that weird? That's what happened to me last night. Okay, thank you. That's my husband, Mike.
She made me a little grumpy. She got Dallas and she missed the station.
She screwed up. She cuts it too close. It's her fault.
Yeah. Well, none for them for sure, but if you have 10, I'll take it. Oh, why is that?
Because someone pointed out to me that, well, I can kind of track it on myself,
Okay.
but it will highlight where some city schools, the district policy, so there is some schools in the county that have it.
Okay.
But the county is not.
Okay.
And that you have it. I
Okay.
have it on my website.
So on your website, this information is also. And you are.
On the section. And that's just how to recognize symptoms.
No, this is great.
Well, it's big, yeah,
Okay, great. Thank you.
No, it's fine. I'm here for
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 21st. At our special starting time of 1 o'clock today, we have a graduation tonight. We want to make sure all of our board members are able to attend. So we're meeting earlier today. This is a regular meeting of the Wake County Board of Education that we're calling to order. I welcome those of you who are watching at home and those of you who've joined us in person today. Wake County Board of Education meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. The public is cordially invited to attend board meetings to observe the board as it conducts its official business. Persons who willfully interrupt, disrupt, or cause disturbances at an official meeting may be directed to leave by the presiding officer. Members of the audience should show respect for the speakers by refraining from loud comments or other disruptions. Disruptions by any person or persons of a public meeting will be subject to action in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143-318-17. I do note we have a quorum. We have another member who's been a little bit delayed but should be joining us shortly. Those of you who are able, please stand and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will begin our meeting with comments from our superintendent, Dr. Robert Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we approach Memorial Day, I'd like to start this afternoon by congratulating 17 of our schools for receiving the Purple Star Award, which recognizes schools that demonstrate a strong commitment to students and families connected to our nation's military. The annual award is given by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and I had the honor of attending the award ceremony in Raleigh on May 9th to represent all of our winning schools. I was joined by Michael Pesh, our Director of School Social Work, and Dawn White, a school social worker and member of our district's Military Connected Family Committee. So to earn this distinction, schools must meet specific criteria, including designating a staff person to serve as the point of contact for military families, demonstrating an understanding of deployments and how they may impact a military-connected child, and conducting at least one school-wide activity that shows appreciation for our military service members and their families. You can find a full list of our winners on our Facebook page. As many of you know, my wife and my daughter are proud Army veterans, so these awards are certainly personally meaningful to me. So I know firsthand the unique challenges the military families face and service members and their students. I also know that a supportive and understanding school environment can make all the difference by welcoming new students and families, then staying in touch to make sure these needs are being addressed. This is an excellent example of the many ways our schools try to meet students and families where they are, doing all they can to make sure students are set up for success. That's our goal for everyone, but it's particularly gratifying to be able to support those who have dedicated their lives to defending our nation. So I want to say congratulations to our Purple Star Award recipients and my personal thanks to all current and former members of our military and their families. I'll share with the board and the community that as a school district, we are at or near 10,000 students that are service connected. And so when I think about Cumberland County, that is a military community, they have roughly 15 to 18,000 students. We are nearly where they are. And so we've got to make sure that we double down on that commitment to those service members. I'd next like to congratulate Anna Cheney of Phillips High School and Longview School, who last week was named the 2024 Wake County Public Schools Psychologist of the Year. Representatives of the school psychology department and her colleagues at Phillips surprised her with that news. Anna is a Raleigh native and a proud product of Wake County Public School System. She began her career as a school psychologist in 1992 in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and she has served in Wake County since 2010. Anna is a community resiliency model instructor and a trainer for both youth mental health first aid and teen mental health first aid. She is also committed to advocating for the needs of marginalized populations, and her colleagues say she approaches challenges with a problem-solving mindset and perseverance. Anna says, "My journey as a school psychologist continues to be fulfilling and impactful, driven by a passion for helping others, fostering positive change, and always treating each student the way I would want my own children to be treated." I'm continually inspired by school psychologists and mental health experts who have devoted themselves to serving young people. We know that student support services personnel are more critical now than ever, and I'm genuinely grateful for each and every one of these professionals. So congratulations to Anna on this well-deserved award. And finally, I'm happy to announce that we launched our first ever all-staff employee engagement survey last week. Measuring and improving employee experience is one of our 7 goals in our strategic plan, and this survey is our first step in that process. It will provide all staff an opportunity to share their feedback on workplace culture and experience. Staff will respond to questions on topics including workplace safety, respect, recognition, trust in leadership, communication, work-life balance, and a whole lot more. So we've received more than 4,000 responses since the survey was launched on the 16th of May, and we'll continue to remind staff who have not completed the survey how important it is to share their perspective. And as a reminder, the survey will close on May 30th, so we will continue to push for our employees to complete it. So we look forward to sharing the feedback we gather over the summer and fall, and then using that feedback to guide important decisions about moving the district forward. So our staff members are our most important asset, as we all know, and I'm optimistic that this survey will help us do an even better job of giving them what they need to be effective. So many thanks to all of those who have already taken the survey, and I encourage those who haven't to make sure their voice is heard before May 30th. I do want all employees to recognize and understand that I take very seriously in them giving us feedback about what we do well and what we don't do well, and their voice is very important, so we want to emphasize that. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. We do have a busy agenda today, so I don't want to take too much time, but there are a couple items I do want to address and help hold up. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. I know that we've talked about this in the past, and I know that everyone around this board table has been very dedicated and very intentional supporting the mental health of our students. One of the ways that we see that work is in the work of our behavioral health professionals, our counselors, our school social workers, psychologists, nurses. And as you all know, these are positions that don't receive adequate funding from the state. And so as Dr. Taylor and I are going to be speaking with our county commissioners later this week at their budget work session, one of the very important parts of our budget that we hold up as essential for the success and the support of our students, making sure that all of our students show up ready to learn, is being able to have those mental health professionals in the building and available. The ones that we have do great work, but it would be hard for anyone if they're trying to support 5 different schools all in one week, going from school to be there when every student needs them. So we'll be holding that up, and I hope that our commissioners will also see the value of that and see that it's an important human service priority that we need to fund. It's also Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We've had some wonderful celebrations at schools around the district. This is something, my district in particular, in the school in Wake County, has a very large number of new and first generation Asian Americans who've moved into the area. We've had wonderful celebrations of culture, of music, of food, and if you haven't been able to get out to attend any of these, I would encourage you to. Last night, I don't know how many of my fellow board members who were able to attend were planning on speaking about this, but the Ignite program that we had, the end of the year awards celebration for a lot of our student equity teams was just amazing. And it's one of those programs, I don't know if because it was off-site, we were able to capture it on YouTube or anything, but it really is one of those things that we do that I wish more people knew about, because we know that discussions of equity, of DEI are very charged, and there's a lot of political conversation and discussion about them. But to see these projects, these programs that our students brought to us were amazing. And to see the focus and the results, right? I was talking to Vice Chair Johnson Hostler. We have high school students engaged in data collection, metric analysis, and program evaluation more sophisticated than I've seen in some government agencies. But to show the academic achievement that were the results of tutoring, support programs, mentoring, all the different ways that they'd identified in their schools that they could reach out and support the academic success of their peers. Again, it was just truly amazing. And, this is part of our strategic plan. We've made it a priority. And, just at its simplest, when our test scores go up and we have academic success for, what we sometimes, dehumanize as subgroups for these children, all of our academic success rates go up. We all win. And it was so great to see our students taking an active role in that. I know some of you will have your own comments about the event as well, but I wanted to make sure that I addressed it myself. Finally, I wanted to share some of these with you. Dr. Taylor, if you could pass these down. I know we talk about our board advisory committees. We had a really interesting topic this time, and I just wanted to share some of the information. We had a lot of questions in the community about mobile phone use and device use in schools. And so what I'm passing out to you is one is a copy of what our district policy is in terms of the use of phones and mobile devices, which pretty simply is that it's oftentimes a school-by-school set of rules, right? Because conditions, needs are going to be different in different schools around the district. But then that green sheet just shows you a couple random unidentified policies at different schools and how much they vary. And this might be something that, again, there was a lot of community discussion around. We might want to take a look at, even if it's not a policy change, just learning what staff is doing. Are there, the R&P, right, the rules and procedures, the rules and practices that we might have that kind of guide some of these. And we had a lot of great feedback from parents, from administrators, about different things we could do, even something as simple as, the consents that we have students and families sign out when they got their Chromebooks years ago now. Is there some sort of consent or agreement about device policies and how students use their devices that we should send home at the beginning of every school year as part of that student handbook? Or just helping everyone understand and know what the expectations are. If they might have some conditions, there might be different rules for high school than there are elementary school, and that's fine. There might be some differences between schools around the district, and that's fine. But making sure that people are aware of those differences and know what the policy is seems like it could go a long way to improve the situation that a lot of our students face in school. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Vice Chair, Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you. I will be brief. One, because we have a packed agenda and my voice is still barely returning. But again, I finally have a diagnosis and I'm not contagious, Dr. Taylor. Had a sinus infection and laryngitis. I will echo the chair's comments on our equity cohorts and the way that the thing that I'll add is the way that they showed us that when a problem is clearly articulated and you have a methodology to reach the solution, that they can do it. And I hope that is a driving force for our adults, that if our students can take a year long to talk to their peers, then we can encourage that and actually start to seek the change as adults. And they clearly, to the chair's point, articulated the clear understanding that is when we do the outreach to one community, it serves all of our community well because we are a community. So congratulations to our first cohort and looking forward to the great work from our second cohort. I'll also have the great privilege of being with Dr. Taylor and a couple other board members at our Future Teachers who very excitedly, we got to hear them get their pay, their stipend for being a part of our Future Teacher program, and also seeing the 14 who will be coming teachers in our district and starting in August. And so an exciting time and a reminder of the beauty that while they will be teaching our young people will also be teaching them. And if it was recorded, looking at those students from last night is a great way for them to see the reciprocal nature in which our students can also be teaching us. And also, it's the things, when we ask the questions, we actually get the answers on what students need to be successful academically. We all talked about mental health the first board meeting, and I will end by saying one of the other pieces that I think is important that those students lifted up is in the surveys, self-esteem was almost always quoted for those students of color or BIPOC students who were not feeling seen and heard and adequately supported in their schools, which we know for young people, self-esteem is absolutely an indicator red flag for mental health issues. And so while that was not their intent, I think it's important, again, when we ask student questions, we often get answers, and it's important that we actually look at all the ways in which they responded, even if they're telling us something to a question that we didn't ask, which is often always the case with young people when given the opportunity. So as adults, my last reminder is lean into our curiosity with our young people. It's actually how we can get the most information from them.
Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Rice first today.
Hi, thank you. I am excited, and my comment's going to be very short, but I just wanted to echo some of the great things that I've heard, and just say I agree with the things that I've heard so far. One of the things I want to celebrate is the amazing Wake County students that were honored by Dr. Dudley Flood Awards for Youth Image Awards. There was citizenship and academic excellence and so many other great things that students across Wake County are doing, not only shining bright within our own school district, but in community, showing what they were doing really great. One of the things that I really love to hear, one of the students wasn't able to be there to accept their award because they were actually leading something else in community. So it was just amazing to see the great students that we are supporting, and here and watching them thrive. The last thing I wanted to last night was just absolutely phenomenal with Ignite. Just super proud of our equity superintendent, Dr. Chavis, and Campbell and Chauncey and all those great teams, everyone. Just phenomenal job with showing how this does improve our academic excellence. Some people ask, is it really about academics? It really is. And we saw students show how they could actually solve academic challenges through equity, which was phenomenal. And so, of course, I'll end my statements and just encouraging everyone through the hustle and bustle of graduation ceremonies and final exams and teachers who are trying to prep for it and parents and staff and all of that. I just want to say, take a break from the hustle and bustle of daily life. Find a quiet space to meditate and center your mind. Embrace the present moment and let go of stress and worries. And so that is my wellness message for everybody today.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. We'll come around this way. Ms. Mahaffey?
Thank you so much. Yesterday, I was able to attend the first of two public hearings on the fiscal year 2025 budget that the county commissioners held. There's another one today at 7 p.m. at the County Commons Building. And I just want to thank the folks who are coming out to support our budget, the Board of Education's budget, and the ask that we have. And I really want to take a moment to thank our commissioners and County Manager Ellis for being good partners in supporting our school system. It may seem like a fraught time that we're advocating for this, but we know that they really do care about this district and the students in this district and the people that work for it. And I don't want that to get lost during this time. I am excited to attend one of my favorite ceremonies, and it is the Holly Grove Elementary School Memorial Day ceremony. Memorial Day, of course, is this coming Monday, honoring our military personnel who died in service to our country. Every year they do this, and it is the quietest I have ever seen an entire year-round school full of students. They have a flag ceremony by the local Civil Air Patrol. They have a flyover. They have the missing man table, and it really lets students and their families understand the different military traditions that go into honoring those that served and those that died in service to our country. So many thanks to the Hedgies for continuing this. It really is something that is out of this world. So it's weird to say that about a Memorial Day ceremony, but these kids really do take it to heart. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Ms. Edmonds?
Thank you. With regard to the Ignite event, I'll just say, and I said this to Ms. Rice, if the student leaders that we saw last night, if they're any indication of the leaders of tomorrow, we are in good hands, y'all. we are in really good hands. It was very impressive, and thank you to all their mentors and coaches that they have at their schools for helping with that work. It was a great event. So I want to thank, I'll try to fly through all this. I want to thank WakeEd Partnership for another great STEMposium. Mr. Hershey and I attended, Dr. Taylor was there, and spent a lot of time. I noted how that you were there a good while, and I think, I'm not surprised, but I know that the students and the schools appreciated that. Mr. Hershey and I had a really great conversation with East Wake Magnet High School about their efforts to increase recycling at their school and make that a norm. I know Mr. Hershey and I care a lot about that, and I'm so glad and want to thank you, Mr. Hershey, that the Facilities Committee is going to focus on sustainability, because I know we all know we've got a lot of work to do in that area. At this month's SHAC meeting, which I'm the board liaison for, there was a presentation from the Poe Health Center about the harms of social media on students, and we've heard that before as a board. We've had those conversations, but this was different information shared in this particular presentation that was really eye-opening to me, and I think even though we have discussed it as a board, it's a topic that is worthy of more understanding and more discussion. So I want to thank the Poe Health Center for bringing that to the SHAC, and I hope they can bring that particular presentation to the board at some point. Thank you to everyone that participated in my last BAC meeting last week, to Dillard Drive Elementary for hosting us, to Drew Cook and Kendra Allen for providing an update on the impacts of Senate Bill 49, the Parent Bill of Rights. Dr. Woodson shared a brief update on SB 49 with the SHAC as well, and I really appreciated those updates. I also want to thank Kristen Michaels from Be Smart for Kids for her presentation at the BAC on safe gun storage. It was very well received by the entire membership, and I encourage any other board member that has not yet had that presentation at your BAC to put them on your agenda for next school year. It aligns with the safe storage resolution that we passed unanimously, so there should be no hesitation to invite them to bring this life-saving information to your school communities. I was glad also to attend the Future Teachers event with some of you, and the one thing that I'll say about that is that was so impressive to me, and I just learned it that day, was that the graduating college seniors that are coming to WCPSS out of that 2020 cohort, they started remotely, the program remotely, right, because of lockdown. We didn't lose any of those kids. And I didn't know that until that ceremony, and I think that is so remarkable, and I think it's a testament not only to their passion and their dedication to the teaching profession, but it has to be a testament also to the mentors and the leaders that are in our school district that worked with those students, with that cohort. So kudos to all of you, and I'm so excited that they're coming to join us. My last comments are related to the school meal increase vote that we're going to have later today. I want to spotlight a coalition, a statewide coalition that is working to bring universal school meals to North Carolina. It's called School Meals for All NC. I want to share their guiding principles with you. No child should go hungry. School meals should be available at no cost to all students in public schools. No child should experience shame or stigma due to an inability to pay for school meals. And then school meals help children succeed both in and out of school and build strong, resilient communities. They say that food is the most important school supply, which I love, and that may have been something that's been said for many, many years, but I honestly have never heard it framed that way, and I think it's perfectly stated. Kids need pencil, paper, textbooks, technology to learn, and we call those school supplies. Food is absolutely just as essential to learning as all of those other things, so we should talk about school meals that way. I encourage everyone listening to this discussion, following our vote today, to join School Meals for All NC and their efforts. We are held accountable for student success, for academic success, as we should be, and that the state should provide all of the resources kids need, including the most basic need of school meals, so that they can focus on learning. If there are hundreds of millions of dollars in the state budget to give private school vouchers to the wealthy, surely there is money to feed hungry children. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ng?
Hi, good afternoon. 2 weeks ago, I was at Millbrook High School to celebrate the winners of C-SPAN Student Cam documentary contest. I know Ms. Rice had winners in her district too. And for the past 3 years, Mr. Siegel's AP Government class has been participating in this contest. And the students compete by creating and submitting documentary videos of relevant current topics. Last year, C-SPAN was there at Millbrook to help celebrate their first winning group. This year, C-SPAN came back to Millbrook because we actually had 4 groups recognized as winners, the most of any school in North Carolina. There were over 3,200 entries from students in 42 different states and countries. So this is quite an achievement. The entire AP Government class and many of the proud parents were there to help celebrate. This year's theme was looking forward while considering the past. We were able to watch some of the excerpts from the winning documentaries, and I have to say that they were quite impressive in the quality and the content. I think that we have some future journalists and documentarians in that room. Wake County Commissioner Cheryl Stallings was there, and she and I both were given the honor to address the group and give some encouraging words. The winners also received congratulations from Representative Deborah Ross, Senator Ted Budd, and Governor Cooper. I want to thank Mr. Dan Siegel for his leadership and Dr. Saunders for his leadership as well, and for their commitment to making learning fun. And I really anticipate that we will need a bigger room next year. And as some of you have already mentioned, the Future Teachers Luncheon last Friday to celebrate the latest cohort of graduating seniors, college seniors. And since 2015, this program has been recruiting high school seniors with strong desire to go into the career in teaching. And those who were chosen to be in the program go on to study in college and then come back every year to attend a week-long trainings and followed by a celebration. And they are automatically offered contracts once they completed their university education to teach in Wake County. So it was really encouraging to see the excitement and the energy in that room. And they were especially excited when they heard that their stipend was going to go up this year. So it is clear that these young people have a true passion for teaching. Congratulations to all the graduating college seniors in the program. I'm glad that we as a system have the forethought and dedication to invest in the future through this program, and I look forward to great things from these graduates. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. And we'll close out with Mr. Hershey.
Thank you, Chair Harity. First, let me thank Ms. Edmonds for the kind words, but I also want to highlight or put the spotlight on our policy chair, Ms. Mahaffey, who is going to be bringing the sustainability policy to us for the first conversation next week. I wasn't going to get to this, but I want to make sure I cover everybody. I want to shout out to the Roseville Rams, their women's track team for a state championship, the Green Level men's lacrosse team for a state championship. We are going to have a representative in the softball state finals. It will either be Gardner or Wake Forest Roseville. I'm sorry, Wake Forest. I'm showing when I coached there. Wake Forest Cougars. I'm going to get in trouble for that. But I'll be cheering for Wake Forest probably because I coached there. So congratulations to those teams, and also congratulations to all of our student athletes, no matter the wins or losses when they're out there competing. They do a great job representing us, and thank you to all our coaches who spend countless hours with our student athletes. And if I was to try to do the math on how much they actually make per hour, it's a minuscule amount, and it's not that I'm advocating. I just want people to recognize that coaches do spend a lot of time with our student athletes above and beyond, and often are taking money out of their own pocket to help students when they need help. So a shout out to our coaches. I was not at the Ignite program yesterday because I was at Green Elementary School. I want to thank the Green Elementary School PTA for putting on an internet safety program last night. Sarah Purdue came and gave a presentation. I think CBS News covered, or CBS, our local news station, covered it, and I appreciate them being there. Internet safety, we can't talk about it enough because we know the dangers that are out there, so I really appreciate the Green PTA for putting that on. I wasn't expecting the handout today. I am paying attention, and there was some advocacy around the internet at the Green Elementary School last night around cell phones and not having them in schools, and I'm keeping my eye on Fairfax County Public Schools who are initiating a pilot program. We will see where that goes. Lastly, I'm just going to hold up my box of masks that I still have. The North Carolina State Senate passed a bill banning masks, and they took out the exemption for health, which, I just want to represent our students and staff. We don't have a lot, but we do have a handful of students and a handful of staff that still wear masks. And they should have that right. And it's not to be deceitful. They're not trying to hide their identity. It is all about health, and clearly there is, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say there is confusion about that aspect of the bill. I want to thank the State House for hearing from representatives that want to add back the health care exemption. It's really should be done, and I appreciate them doing that. So I just want to give voice to our and it's just a handful, and they shouldn't be punished for it. Let's have a good, clear law on it. And that reminds me, tomorrow I will be at the General Assembly with Superintendent Taylor. I want to thank Representative Perret for the House bill for our leadership academies. I believe that's going to get its first hearing tomorrow in front of maybe the local government committee. So I appreciate her work on it and all our local representatives pushing for that. And I will be there at about 1 o'clock to hear it with, like I said, with our superintendent. And I appreciate him being there and speaking on behalf of the school system. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hershey. By the way, in regarding that cell phone policy, I found out in my research the Wake County cell phone policy was actually adopted, for me it seems like yesterday, but in 2002. And at that time, prior to that, phones had been banned. And in addressing that policy, they made sure that the language included the other two devices of concern, pagers and two-way radios. So it's been a long time, and it might be some time that we need to take a fresh look at just some of the presence of those schools, especially as we get new devices like smartwatches and other things that may offer new challenges. So, all right, so we will approve the meeting agenda, not to go back to 2002, but we do have a couple amendments we need to make. We've had some issues with Assembly today. If anyone's had trouble accessing it, we apologize. We're working to get those fixed. But at this point, I would entertain any amendments to today's agenda.
Okay. Chair Hagerty, I make a motion that we approve the meeting agenda with the following amendments, and I apologize for the length in this. For Board Policy 7240, that it get removed from the agenda. That's a drug-free and alcohol-free workplace, second reading. To add to the action agenda, Policy 7241, drug-free and alcohol testing of motor vehicle operations for second reading. For Policy 5023-6128-7268, emergency use of Naloxone, first reading. The pracies is being revised due to incorrect presenter listings. And for Policy 5023-6128-7268, emergency use of Naloxone, first reading, to include a revised pracies that is now attached, reflecting the fourth paragraph, fourth sentence, where staff has replaced the word one with 3, which reflects the changes discussed during board discussions from 1 adult per school to up to 3, at least 3 adults per school.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Those are the proposed amendments to the agenda. to reflect the accuracy of the information posted for our discussion today. First, let me ask, is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Ms. Rice. Are there questions? Ms. Edmonds?
Yes, can we please just repeat those, just so that I and others have it? So we're removing policy 7240, second reading altogether for today.
Correct.
And we are adding 7241, second reading.
To the action agenda, it's currently on consent.
Okay, thank you. And then the revised materials or revised précis, et cetera, for the 50, 23, 61, 28, 72, 68.
Yes, those are staying where they are, but there are revisions that we wanted to bring forward.
If you remember, we actually already adopted policy 7240 on second reading, but we had not adopted 7241. And so this should bring the policy listed in the précis to accurately reflect the materials that you've seen that are in Assembly already. All right? All in favor of the amendments to the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the adopted agenda has been approved. So at this point, we'll move to the public comment portion of our comments, public comment portion of our comments. Speakers commenting on today's agenda will be heard before speakers commenting on other topics. All other speakers will be heard in order of the sign-up, and only the person speaking at the podium will be able to stand. Again, all attendees that are not speaking are asked to remain seated. The public comment portion of today will be limited to 1 hour. The adjustment is due to the schedule of the graduation ceremonies later today. Based on the number of sign-ups, we should be able to accomplish this within that allotted time. Members of the public are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at the substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. Laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel and individual student matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for public comment settings. They are best addressed, these types of comments, including comments about, those offering comments to the board, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern. What I was saying about the individual matters, concerns related to personnel matters or student matters can be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, through our grievance policy and other applicable policies, as opposed to bringing them up in public comments. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, speakers are encouraged to address their comments to the Board of Education and must refrain from personal attacks or insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, and members of the general public, specifically other speakers that are coming up to speak at the meeting tonight. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time. Any materials you wish to share with the board should be handed to the board attorney, Mr. Rod Malone, here either before or after your comments. Again, you may speak up to 3 minutes. Please note the microphones are adjustable. When you begin, the green light at the podium will illuminate, showing your 3 minutes has begun. Don't wait for the green light. It won't come on until you start to speak. So you start to speak, the green light will come on. When you see a yellow light and you hear the first audible tone, that means there's 30 seconds remaining in your time. And then finally, when your speaking time is up, you will see a red light and hear another audible tone. When your time is up, the next speaker will be called to the podium. So we ask that you please respect the time limit and speak for no more than 3 minutes. And you may choose to speak for less time. All right. So our speakers today, we have 2 speakers for on-agenda topics before we have our off-agenda topics. The first speaker we have is Barb Walsh, speaking on emergency use of Naloxone. All right, we'll give you just a minute to get that set up and seated again.
I brought tape this time. My time has started. Good
Thank you, Ms.
afternoon. My
Walsh.
name's Barbara Walsh. I am the Executive Director of Fentanyl Victims Network of North Carolina, also known as fentvic.org. I am the mother of 4 daughters, all of who graduated from Wake County Public Schools. 3 are living, and 1 is dead. She died because she drank a bottle of water that had fentanyl in it. She was a graduate of Apex High School in 2015 and a graduate of Appalachian State in 2020. I am here today because you have before you the vote on emergency use of naloxone in schools, which I support and I urge you to support. If you do approve this, you will join the 25 other school districts in North Carolina who already have this policy in place. Your focus on this policy should expand beyond opioid misuse. Instead, you should be focusing on saving lives through unintentional contact or ingestion of fentanyl, because it is in many, many products all around us, and our students are being affected in their homes. All 200 Wake County schools deserve to have naloxone. It is no different than an EpiPen or an AED system or a fire extinguisher. It's all life-saving equipment. I am aware the purchase of naloxone is not something you had budgeted for. That is why on May 1st, I took 75 families to the General Assembly and spoke with lawmakers. We submitted an appropriation request for $350,000 to be allocated from the opioid settlement fund to purchase naloxone and deliver it to all North Carolina schools. That is for fiscal year 24-25. It is not a recurring request. This will fund 2 boxes of naloxone, 8 milligrams. This is Cloxata, which is a brand name. This is what it looks like. They're little applicators. If you know how to use Flonase, you know how to use naloxone. But we'll have 2 boxes, which is 4 doses, enough at all schools. Another alternate funding opportunity exists to purchase naloxone. That is the Wake County Opioid Settlement Fund, RFP number 24041. Proposals are due June 5th before 3 p.m. Please vote to support emergency use of naloxone in schools. Your vote will ensure all students and personnel will be safe, and installation of naloxone is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Our next speaker on the agenda is John Baylog, speaking on drug policy. Is Mr. Baylog here today? I don't believe I see him. All right, thank you. We'll move to our off-agenda speakers. Our first speaker is Soren Peterson. Good afternoon.
Hello. Hello, board members. My name is Soren Pedersen. I want to go back 10 years to 2014. In 2014, a beginning Wake County teacher salary was $37,702.50, while the living wage, the wage at which a worker can cover their annual expenses of living in their community, was $30,050 a year. Bus drivers were making $12.55 an hour, and non-certified staff wages started at $11.11 an hour, while the hourly living wage was $14.45 an hour. I think we'd all like to think that things have improved over the past 10 years. So what progress have we made? What does the most recent adopted budget recommendation do? Teaching pay, accounting for the school board's budget request and the expected $2,000 increase to the state salary schedule, would be about $50,061 a year for a starting teacher. Bus driver pay has been increased by $7.45 an hour to $20 an hour, and non-certified staff has seen their pay increase by $6.64 an hour. But cost of living during that same time has risen to $48,420 a year. Teaching pay, when you account for the cost of living in Wake County, has gone from 25% above a living wage to only 3% above a living wage. The percentage for bus drivers has gone from 87% to 86%. The percentage for non-certified staff has gone from 77% to 76%. I do want to thank the school board for the budget request that was made this year, but more needs to be done. Wake should be a leader of education in the state, attracting teachers not only from across this region, but across the country. And instead, we are in the same position, if not worse, than where we were 10 years ago. We are devaluing the time and labor of our teachers and school staff by not paying a wage at which they can provide to live for only themselves in this community, let alone a family. I come from the city of Asheville in western North Carolina, and over the past 10 years, we have seen teacher pay fall from 35% above a living wage to 6% below a living wage. Our teachers in Asheville are facing a crisis. We have seen a 31% attrition rate among our local education agency, with 18% of our teachers leaving teaching in North Carolina entirely. Now, every time that teachers come to the Asheville School Board and make a request for higher wages, it is seen as such a large jump that we cannot get back on track. I know the state bears responsibility here, but Wake is an expensive place to live. It is 30% more expensive than the state average. And even if the state did what they needed to do, we would still need to support local non-teacher employees. So I ask you, do not fall behind like Asheville has.
Thank you, Mr. Pedersen. Our final speaker is Krista Judd. Krista Judd speaking on Mental Health Awareness Month. Is Ms. Judd here? All right, well, in that case, we will close our public comment period, and we will turn to our agenda. Board members, you have the consent agenda before you and all of the items. Is there a motion at this time?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion from Ms. Mahaffey for adoption of the consent agenda, second by Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. All in favor of adoption of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the items on the consent agenda have been adopted. So next, we'll turn to our action agenda, our amended action agenda. And the first item that I have is Board Policy 5023, 6128-7268, emergency use of Naloxone. And I believe we'll have Michelle Woodson present.
Yes, I know that's been a little bit of an adjustment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you for the opportunity for first reading of the Naloxone policy, Policy 5023, 6128, 7268, emergency use of Naloxone. As already commented, there have been some adjustments to the board materials. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Based on the conversation at the April 23rd Policy Committee meeting, the board articulated that it seeks to minimize and prevent opioid misuse. An intervention that reduces overdose deaths is Naloxone, which is a drug antagonist, that reverses the effects of opioids and can be life-saving in the event of an opioid overdose. This policy addresses the administration of emergency Naloxone under a non-patient-specific prescription. Student-specific prescriptions for Naloxone are addressed in Policy 6125, administering medicines to students. The only recommendation at the April 23rd meeting was that for this policy was a request for an adjustment to the proposed policy that can be found in paragraph 4. Originally stated, it indicated that each school principal shall designate one or more school personnel as a part of the medical care plan. The recommendation was to change the 1 to a 3. We have made that adjustment in your updated materials, and we are looking for any additional questions or discussion at this time.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Woodson. Are there any questions before a motion at this time? Or any questions for Speaker? Policy Chair Mahaffey?
I was just going to make a motion.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the Policy 5023, emergency use of Naloxone.
Second.
Okay, I heard the motion by Ms. Mahaffey, second by Mr. Hershey. Is there discussion at this time? Mr. Hershey?
Just a quick question, and maybe this is not the right time for this question, but with regard to the June 5th deadline that was presented at public comment, is that something that we as a school system need to be doing, and are we doing?
So we needed to get policy in place first. Once we have policy in place, we are seeking what we can do to find funding, and then, of course, we'll follow that up with training information. We are aware of that event.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Ms. Mahaffey and then Dr. Ng.
Given that deadline and given that this policy needs to be in place for that deadline, Chair Haggerty, can I amend my motion that we waive second reading so that this can go through and be adopted ASAP so that staff can begin working on that?
So I understand the intent. I'm going to look over at our parliamentarian, Mr. Malone. Can Ms. Mahaffey, who made the original motion, offer the amendment to her motion to add the waiver of second reading as we consider this motion?
Yeah, she can amend, excuse me, she can amend her own motion, yes.
All right.
Excuse me, jeez.
Thank you. So we have an amendment to the motion, to Ms. Mahaffey's own motion by Ms. Mahaffey, seconded by Mr. Hershey. So first, we'll take a vote on the amended motion, not the final motion. All in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so now we're back to discussion of the motion as amended. Dr. Ng.
Yes, I'm very happy that this is presented to us. You know, and as our public comment says, you know, fentanyl is everywhere. There's a fentanyl crisis, and we all have to be aware of the signs and symptoms, and you know, there's going to be an educational push that's needed to make sure that everyone is understanding the signs. It's just like, I think I mentioned in the work session, you know, that just like when people know what BFAST is, to recognize the signs and symptoms of a stroke, we should be able to recognize the signs and symptoms of somebody who has a drug overdose or opioid overdose, even if it's an unintentional ingestion or whatever, you know, contact. So I think that this is important to have, and you know, we can fast track it to get some funding. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. Further comments? Any questions? Ms. Rice?
I thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. I believe we all know that this is very near to my heart as well. I do want to encourage us as a board and current funding that we have right now with our state that came from the governor. I know that our school board is currently doing mental health first aid trainings. I will continue to reiterate that we need to make sure that our students as well as staff is trained in mental health first aid, which shares the signs and symptoms that Dr. Ng was speaking with, as well as showing how to administer the Narcan or the Naloxone. But it's very, very important that our teams know the signs and symptoms of how to help their peers, and that we need to continue to expand the mental health first aid trainings that we're currently doing before the funding runs out.
Agreed.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And I'll endorse that idea as well. I went and I got my certification through a training program that was offered by Youth Thrive. I know Youth Thrive isn't active right now, but Ms. Rice, I'd ask you if you know other outlets that might provide that training?
Well, your board member is one, but yes, currently we have a state. The state has UNC that's currently doing them as well. Poe Health Center does trainings as well. But I'm always willing to do a training or whatever we need to do to support our school system. I'm certified in youth, adult, and the teen mental health first aid. But that teen mental health first aid is very important for our teens to help their peers and know how to seek out help.
Agreed. We do have a program that we're piloting it currently, and we need to scale up quickly. I don't disagree. So we're working on that. Agreed.
All right, thank you. I know it's a little bit off the policy, but as it's related to Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it was appropriate. So thank you. Any other thoughts? Again, I want to commend everybody on the board for bringing this policy, for all the thoughtful consideration and discussion about it. And, you know, Ms. Walsh, I think, you know, just on a personal note, we're all touched by your family's story. You've heard Ms. Rice's story, and I hope that what we do here will not only save lives, but will also serve as an example to other school boards around the state that this is responsible action that everyone should be taking. So thank you for your advocacy today. All right, at this point, I'll call the question on the vote. All in favor of the amended policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes, and since the policy passes, has been adopted, we have waived second reading, so it will be enrolled. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda I have as Board Policy 7514, Educational Leave. This is on first reading. Looks like we have Dr. Mutilla. Good afternoon, Dr. Mutilla.
Good afternoon, Chair Haggerty, members of the board, Superintendent Taylor. I actually have several policies to bring for you tonight, or today, 7514 through 16, 7520, and 7530 all for first read, and then bringing policy 7241, the drug and alcohol testing of commercial motor vehicle operators, for second read on action today. Chair Hagerty, I had 7241, but would you like me to start with 7514?
If you want to start with 7241, if that's how your presentation is structured, we can go with that.
Okay, great. Some of these policies will have little backgrounds. This first one here, 7241, does have some additional background, so all of my presentations won't be as lengthy as this first one here, but just did want to provide some additional context. 7241 is an existing policy which originally came to the board for first reading on March 19th. Due to some revisions recommended by the North Carolina School Boards Association. And those revisions were in Section D of the policy and address the commercial driver's license drug and alcohol clearinghouse that federal law requires all employees must have, go through if they have a commercial driver's license. So those changes were incorporated. There was also some discussions on whether portions of 7241, specifically in Section C there for testing, should be revised to reflect greater continuity and consistency with Policy 7240, which is our drug-free and alcohol-free workplace. And also make it clear that those requirements in Section C were federal requirements and not additional requirements that the board was imposing on employees. So in light of those concerns, we did make some additional revisions to Section C, which is why we were bringing it back on action today. And just in summary, we reorganized paragraph C, and you'll see those changes in green, just to emphasize that these are federal regulations that dictate whether a product is considered a controlled substance for which an employee must be tested. And then the rest of the modifications in Section C there, you'll see in blue. And they, again, are advising employees that the use of certain products may lead to a positive drug test, even if that product is presented as legal, because of a positive drug test is determined by the level of THC and set forth by federal regulation. We also, to be consistent with 7240, removed references to CBD and changed those to cannabis products or products containing cannabis. So we feel like these proposed changes do continue to inform our employees, make it clear that they're federal regulations, and also better aligned to 7240. So with that, we are asking for your approval of the second reading tonight for Policy 7241, drug and alcohol testing of commercial motor vehicle operators.
Thank you, Dr. Mutillo. Is there a motion at this time? Chair Mahaffey, or Policy Chair Mahaffey?
Chair Hagerty, I make a motion that we approve Board Policy 7241 for first reading, or sorry, second reading.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Mahaffey, a second by Ms. Edmonds. Any discussion, any questions? I will- Just reading the intent there. Sorry if I jumped the gun. All right. I do want to commend staff on this. As you all on the board know, this is one that I had questions about. We have a situation legally where there's a conflict of laws between North Carolina state law and federal law and federal regulation. Federal regulation will trump the state law. And I think staff was very concerned about making sure all employees had notice, adequate notice over what they could expect, even if they've heard there's a state law that might allow a product, knowing what the federal regulation is. And so this, I know I will apologize to staff, I might have made it more complicated than it needed to be, but to make sure that everyone had full understanding and notice of what the policy was, what would be tolerated, what wouldn't, and why, especially if it were to be contested through whatever appeals process, I thought was very important. So thank you all very much, and I apologize for how long it took.
We appreciate the input and feedback.
All right, are there any other questions or discussion about Policy 7241? All right, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor of adoption of the policy on second reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy has been adopted. Next up on your list?
Yep. Policy 7514, educational leave for first reading. This is a new policy, and if you remember, this is our attempt to break apart a very long policy into separate leave policies so that employees can better understand the types of leave that are available to them. There may be a few other people in the room excited about these next two policies, but I am. We often get a lot of confusion from our teachers on educational leave versus professional leave, so I feel like this will add clarity to our teachers, or for our teachers. So as explained in the April Policy Committee meeting, we updated language to include reference to district practices and to clarify the differences between educational leave and professional leave. Some of this policy clarifies mentor and beginning teacher and service events would fall under this type of leave. Unpaid educational leave may be granted for certain programs and meetings, and the coverage available to our employees is outlined by different descriptive subheadings. And essentially, most of the leave that our teachers will take will be educational leave. So tonight, we request the board's approval of this first reading of Policy 7514 for educational leave.
Thank you, Dr. Mutillo. Is there a motion?
Chair Hegarty, I make a motion we adopt Board Policy 7514 for first reading.
Is there a second? I heard a motion from Ms. Mahaffey, second from Ms. Caulfield. Are there any questions, any discussion, any debate? Ms. Mahaffey.
I just want to thank Dr. Mutillo, Kendra Hill, and Sally Potofsky for going through this whole lengthy leave process that we're going to see coming through policy, and making it hopefully easier for our employees, and referencing and cross-referencing the DPI manual, federal law, and all the applicable laws that go through it, because it can be very confusing for families, and trying to get a sense of clarity can sometimes be hard. So I'm just going to say that up front, but please know it applies to all of those.
Of course, and I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Any further discussion, further debate, any questions on the policy? If not, we'll call the question. All in favor of adoption of 75, I believe this one is 7514?
Yes, sir.
Educational leave policy on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy has been adopted on has passed first reading and will go on to second reading. The next policy we have is Board Policy 7515, professional organization leave.
Right.
All right, tell us about this one.
All right, thank you, Chair Hagerty. Just briefly, this used to be called professional leave, which led to the confusion between is it professional leave or is it educational leave when I go to attend a workshop. So we have added the word organization into the policy title itself, and that makes it more clear that this leave does really pertain to professional associations, state boards, commissions, those kinds of things. So tonight we're not a whole lot of further discussion on this policy, so we are requesting board's approval of the first reading of policy 7515, professional leave. And this will, again, replace section 6.2 of our long leave policy, which is 2280, 3800, and 4800. I forgot to mention in the last policy that, again, will replace sections of that very long policy once adopted.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mutillo. Is there a motion?
Chair Hagerty, I move that we approve Board Policy 7515 for first reading.
Motion from Ms. Mahaffey. Is there a second? Second. Second from Ms. Edmonds. Any discussion, any debate? All right. In that case, all in favor of adoption of Board Policy 7515, professional organization leave on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy is passed on first reading and will go to second reading. Next up, 7516, civic responsibility leave.
Yep. This policy was initially presented during the March 12th Policy Committee meeting, and then again during the April 23rd Policy Committee. This was another policy where we were working with board feedback to try to make it more clear. So this new policy does provide leave for several types of civic duties: community functions, volunteer services, jury duty, court attendance, elected official duties, those kinds of things. Once adopted, this new policy would replace sections of 2280, 3800, 4800 specifically 7.1 for community responsibility and 7.3 for court attendance. And I did want to highlight that some of the discussion was around the guardian ad litem program. So we did clarify in policies that generally those folks would receive subpoenas and accordingly paid leave under the court appearances section of this. They may also be eligible to use the 2 days of volunteer time under the other provisions. So we've incorporated that now into the policy and are asking for your approval today on first reading of policy 7515, civic responsibility leave.
Chair Hagerty, I'd like to make a motion to approve the policy 7516 on first read.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Caulfield. Is there a second? Second from Ms. Mahaffey. Any discussion, any debate? Ms. Mahaffey.
I just want to thank Ms. Caulfield for lifting up the guardian ad litem piece so we could get that clarification. I know that was something that you had a question about and pushed really hard to make sure that it was there.
Thank you.
Dr. Eng.
Just wanted to clarify, there is no time limit in terms of jury duty, absence for jury duty?
That's correct.
All right. Any further discussion, further debate? Ms. Caulfield.
I just wanted to say thank you because I know that you separated all these out, so it was a little bit more clear, which added a lot of work and a lot of time, so I appreciate you doing that.
Of course.
And I know on behalf of quite a few teachers that do take advantage of some of these programs to help our community, I know that they're very thankful for it, so thank you for that. And for those that are listening, I just wanted to point out, I was kind of new to learning about this program from the teachers, but the guardian ad litem is for community members to volunteer to go out and help those children who are either abused or neglected. So it's a good program for us to also share in the community for those that are listening, that they could also get involved as well. But I know that we've made some teachers pretty happy today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. And, board members, like all of our policies, these aren't going to be written in permanent, unerasable ink, right? So as we implement this and the other policies, if there are areas that maybe there are questions about or any confusion, we can come back and look to address those and improve upon them. But going forward, I think we've had good discussion of the policy. At this point, if there are no other questions or any debate or discussion, any comments? All right, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor of adoption of Board Policy 7516, Civic Responsibility Leave on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy is passed on first reading. We'll go to second reading. Next up, Board Policy 7520, Family and Medical Leave.
Okay. This policy is also a new policy, and even though we have separated out from 2280, it is still very long. As you'll see in your packet, this is the longest policy. And it's largely based on the School Boards Association sample policy with specific provisions about eligibility, application, donations and receipts added. These provisions are largely drawn from DPI benefits manual and federal law, again, with some board customizations from the prior policy. So once adopted, this would replace Section 8.2 of that long policy, 2280, 3800, and 4800. You will see some highlights in the version before you, so just wanted to take that through you. A couple new changes. We did add the cross-references to the DPI benefits manual that we previously discussed in the April Policy Committee meeting. So you'll see those, as well as some small wording corrections. For example, we noticed a couple places where we didn't change term to semester. So to keep that consistent, we made those change and highlighted those in there for you. And the most substantive change is probably the one that's highlighted, where we talk about the fitness for duty. That's down later in the policy. And the changes remove the requirement that all employees who are coming off of a leave must present some fitness for duty note or certification. The vast majority of our employees get a doctor's note for their leave. The doctor's note has an end date on it. They come back, and we don't require any kind of additional medical certification. We may require it in cases where the return date ends up being before the original note on the doctor's note, so we just ask the doctor to update and clear the employee. So we didn't want it to seem like it was required for all employees, but still that this would be an option. So those changes were an attempt to reflect that. So tonight, with those, I'm asking the board's approval of the first reading of policy 7520, family and medical leave.
Thank you, Dr. Matillo. Is there a motion? Ms. Mahaffey?
Chair Hagerty, I make a motion that we adopt Board Policy 7520, Family and Medical Leave for first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Mahaffey, a second from Dr. Ng. Any discussion, any debate? Any questions for Dr. Matillo? All right, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor of adoption of Policy 7520, Family and Medical Leave Act on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy is passed first reading, and we'll move on to second. Next up, Board Policy 7530, military leave on first reading.
Okay, I think this is my last one for the day. So again, this is a new policy based on the School Boards Association model policy. We did not have a lot of discussion during the policy committee, so I will just note that they're, again, highlighted in yellow some of the cross-references that we've added to the DPI manual. So with that, I'm requesting board's approval of the first reading of policy 7530, military leave.
Thank you, Dr. Matillo. Is there a motion?
Chair Hagerty, I make the motion that we approve Board Policy 7530, military leave for first reading.
We have a motion from Ms. Mahaffey.
Second.
We have a second from Ms. Caulfield. Any discussion or any debate? This is the Policy 7530, military leave on first reading. All right, in that case, I'll call the question. All in favor of adoption of Board Policy 7530, of military leave on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy has passed first reading, and we'll go on to second reading. Thank you, Dr. Mutella.
Thank you all.
All right, the next item on our action agenda, under facilities, meal prices for the 2024 and 25 school year. I believe we have Paula DeLuca and Mark Strickland available as well, and Mr. Nieder available as well. All right.
Good afternoon, Chair Hagerty, Superintendent Taylor, and members of the board. At the May 7th work session, Child Nutrition Services presented a recommendation to increase meal prices by 25 cents for both breakfast and lunch for the 2024-2025 school year. And discussion followed to answer questions regarding the information that had been presented, which included our revenue streams and our expenditures and implications, as well as other matters raised. So I'm here today to request the board's approval to consider the paid price increase of 25 cents for both breakfast and lunch. Doing so would increase breakfast from $1.50 to $1.75 and lunch from $3.25 to $3.50 for elementary school students. And it would increase breakfast from $1.75 to $2 and lunch from $3.50 to $3.75 for middle school and high school students. Where we are right now at this time in our operating year is fastly potentially approaching a deficit for the coming year as the year comes to a close. And what we already know about next year is that our prime distribution service provider, who recently submitted a bid, is increasing our distribution fees just to receive a delivery by $400,000. And we do not at this time have a full understanding of our price increases for food and supplies. We also know that our budget for this coming year does not include any increases for wages. And so with that, I come to you with a recommendation for a price increase to try to cover as much of our cost as we possibly can in the coming year. And I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Luca. Are there any questions for Mr. Luca at this time? Dr. Ng?
Forgive me if this has already been mentioned in the past meeting. In terms of the participation in the CEP for various school districts, I see there's a wide range. And what does it take for us to be better able to have more participation in that?
So there is a federal prerequisite that across an entire school system, you have to have at least 25% of your students directly certified to receive SNAP, TANF, or be classified as migrant, runaway, homeless, or foster. in Wake County, we're at 30%. Now, that does not provide you with full free reimbursement level funding from the federal government. There is a magic number, 62.5%, that if you reach that number with all of your students reaching, or I should say, being comprised of those subgroups, then you can receive 100% free level reimbursement funding for your entire district. So effectively, what would happen in terms of our reimbursements is you would take our 30% approximate level where we're at, multiply that times 1.6, and all of the meals we serve on any given day or for the month would be reimbursed at the high reimbursement rate based on that percentage that you achieve. All of the rest of the meals would be reimbursed at 50 cents. And so there would be no other income to offset the cost of providing the meals necessarily for those students. As far as other districts, their composite of students is very different, and that's the reason why some of them have many more CEP schools than we currently have.
Thank you. Mr. Hershey.
Thank you for bringing this today. I just want to highlight two things from the meeting. One, I appreciate the responsiveness on the food waste audit, and I shared it with my colleagues today that Wiley Elementary School had done one on April 30th. I didn't know if you had prior knowledge to that, but they reclaimed about 30 or so milk cartons, and Wiley's a pretty small elementary school, about 410 kids, so 7.5%, and you can do some quick math. I mean, we're probably throwing away 10,000 milk cartons, unopened full milk cartons every day from because of federal law. So I want to continue to advocate that we develop our own federal legislative agenda. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank Ms. Johnson-Hostler for your advocacy on this work, and that you have advocated for, to the federal government that we need changes, but so we use our collective voice, and it's not just individuals. I would like to see us move in that direction. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Hershey. Any other comments? Ms. Caulfield.
I just wanted, in case anybody wasn't listening to our work session the last time, from what Mr. Hershey was just referring to with the waste, waste also equals money, right? And that would be a savings, but it would also feed other children and help with that. And this is, just to reiterate, this is something that by law we have to give them a milk carton and a certain vegetable and ice cream, well, not necessarily ice cream, but that's what they kind of go to, and then maybe not eat their vegetables, right? But this is required by law. They do require us to put certain things on their plate that costs money to do that, whether they're consuming them or not. So this is something that we can advocate for to save money. Am I correct in everything that I'm saying?
Yes, and so our meal pattern requirements are very specific regarding the lean proteins we have to offer, the minimum serving sizes of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and of course the fluid milk. And students have to take for lunch at least 3 of those items. One of them has to be a half cup of fruit or vegetable. If they don't take the fruit or vegetable, the meal is no longer considered reimbursable, and we will not receive any federal funding for the meal. And then, of course, I talked about those subgroups on vegetables that are also an added complication. And, I think, again, I would just like to add that the meals we serve are very healthy. We meet a lot of other very specific nutrient requirements, including calorie ranges, fats, sodium levels, and coming soon in about a year will be added layers of restrictions on sodium and then sugar.
And if I remember correctly, in our last meeting, you were saying that if we did not go with this pay increase, it then turns to be lower quality for our students.
Well, what it means is we have to make choices. So you have a revenue stream, and you only have so much that you can do with it, and we have those cost categories. The 2 that I said were really our big lifts. Our big lifts are wages and benefits. It's running us about 59% when it should be around 40%. And then we've got our food, which candidly we're doing pretty well with. We've been running about 38%, when that should really be 40 to 45%. So you see that we have to do exchanges. It's like you've got a pie, and you've got to cut out the piece of pie and put it in the place where you feel like you can get your best resource from that. if that helps with an analogy.
It does, it does. My struggle is to put a burden on the families with raising the prices on them because of all the outside sources that are coming to us and making us raise the prices. But if we don't, then it also means that our students are it's going to fall back on them. So that it is a big struggle to decide which is the better way to go, burden the families with the cost or burden the students with, having less. It's just a struggle, that's it. I just wanted to point that out because I know people might think that if they're listening to it, it's an easy decision, and it's not.
It's a very difficult decision. It's pretty much a forced choice. It's not our choice. It's just what, we're forced to do because we have to try to cover our costs as best as we can. And we want to be there for the students. We want to provide the very best meal that we can.
And I do hope, I know that we've had conversation will continue as far as the budget goes. I know we're having a lot of discussion with that, so over the next year, I guess that's going to be really more for me, understanding how we could work with that fund balance a little bit better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could comment, and do thank you for those comments. The biggest challenge that we have is trying to create a program that is solvent, but meet those nutritional needs. And so I know a lot of that work that we have to do is to look at how do we make this program one that is profitable, that does not create a financial burden on the district, and that is the most difficult part that you do. And so I appreciate, Mr. Luca, those things that you shared about the CEP program, and we'll certainly do more to talk about how we can qualify more schools. But I also know part of the work that we have to do is to double down our efforts on those students and families that qualify, because that is a way to offset what we get in reimbursement, and that is a large part of what we have to do. And certainly we want to spend more time, as you said, Mrs. Caulfield, about talking about the financial impact, not only on the fund balance, but with this program in general. I can tell you that I'm a longtime advocate of child nutrition, and I've led this work both at the district, state, and national level. And it's something that's very dear to me, and I do appreciate the words that Ms. Edmonds shared before. One of those measures that we took when I was at the department was to ensure that we limited the indirect cost to 8%. And I can tell you I probably made a lot of enemies with superintendents, but I understand that it can be a cash cow program, but it is about how we create a robust program that benefits children and not a school district. And so that's how serious that work was for me. But I know that when it comes to putting a burden on families that will have to pay the cost, that is the most difficult decision that you make. But ultimately, the work is clear to me in terms of how we can make a stronger program. The efforts that we do with the State Department about food waste, because that is a serious issue. And I can tell you that this is something that I've always engaged on, and I will continue to do that work. And for me, it is a double-edged sword about how do we keep a program in the black from a fiscal standpoint, but also build a robust program that's going to benefit children. And that is work that we do in schools in terms of the type of programs that we have for participation, from in the cafeteria all the way to breakfast in the classroom, which is the highest participation. And so this work will remain at the forefront, and we're committed to doing everything we can to make it a robust program for children and for the district.
So, Ms. DeLuca, I know that you've heard from board members today individually and during the work session about how much of a priority this is for them, for all of us. And I know that you have agreed to come back and talk about the CEP program in more detail. But like to Dr. Taylor's point, there's a financing argument, and then there's really almost like a human services argument. And I don't want us to focus on one to the exclusion of the other. And so what I'd like to ask, if Dr. Taylor would consent to it, is just like we had a commitment to come back with some other policies to talk about, like, for example, the pay schedule, a commitment to come back at the end of the summer and really do a deeper dive into some of the problems regarding access, either qualification for our free and reduced lunch programs, but then programs for students that don't necessarily qualify, or, you know, who are still experiencing a problem where we've talked about angel funds or other assistance or aid that's out there. How do we guarantee that those funds are available, that students can access them? Are there ways that we can provide meals where there is no stigma attached? What can we do to improve this? And really bring back some you know, quantitative data from schools and qualitative data from individuals' stories, and really spend some time really working on this issue. This isn't something that we should talk about once a year when it comes time to evaluating the meal prices. It sounds like this is something that everyone is concerned about, and if, Dr. Taylor, you're okay with that, I really would like us to dive into some deeper detail.
Absolutely. We'll schedule out both time and recommendations, and hopefully I'll have some board members that will be willing to be a part of that process, but absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Rice?
Yeah, I wanted to I'm going to be very short with this, so I apologize for the brevity, but I'm going to be very direct. I also would like to add professional development to that with our staff. I'm hearing too many times the way that we're having to, unfortunately, not provide a meal for our children, how they're being addressed or how it's being done. So with that process of doing better, I need for us to really look at what it looks like for the moment, even until we get to this coming back, but what will it look like for the moment? End of summer, we still have year-round students that are still going to be in school, but we need to address those year-round school staff, how we're addressing these children who may not be able to qualify at the moment, the embarrassment of being turned away with the food. I am extremely concerned about how our students are being addressed to not be able to receive the meal. I know I'm not the only person that's seen or witnessed this. I have to continue to reiterate that our customer service has to be 5-star at all times. I know that we do great here at Wake County around that, but I would like to see us improve with it, with how we do it. And so that's something that's a concern for me. But I'm all for everything that our board chair has said, but I will hold us accountable for addressing the need of food with our children. It's just Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we just do have to provide the basic if we do nothing else.
Okay, Mr. Hershey?
So, Ms. Rice's comments beg the question of why do we ever turn food away from a child in our schools? And if we have to change policy, can we please do so? Because we just cannot do that anymore.
Absolutely.
There's I don't even have to say anything else. Whatever steps we have to take, if it costs a little bit more money, that's fine, but we're punishing the child, and it's not their fault. So whatever we have to do, I would be in favor of doing.
So, Paula, if you could share what those options are for a child right now when they come through a line and they don't have the funding, but whatever that limitation, Mr. Hershey, you're right, there is a policy limitation to that, and that's something that the board could always revisit, but certainly talk about what happens when a child comes through.
Sure, and I'd like to dovetail a response. Our staff is trained and trained and trained again to properly manage our students when they come to a cashier and they don't have sufficient funds on their account. It's supposed to be handled in such a way that the student is taken to work through that with the manager out of sight of all others. So if there's anything that's happening that's not consistent with that requirement, we need to know about that because we are emphatic about that, care of our students. When the student does not have sufficient funds, the manager is to, number one, see if there's a sibling that they can automatically transfer funds from their account so that it's a very seamless process and the student can go with their meal of choice. If there's no funds in a sibling's account, then if a child is able to call their parent and they can electronically make a quick transfer remotely using our My School Bucks service, then we allow that to happen. If that's not practical, then a lot of our schools have what we call this angel account, and the manager is to look to see if there's funds available, and if there are, money's transferred from that angel account into the student's account so they can take their meal of choice. However, if we've exhausted all of those things, and there's no angel money in the school's account, then the student is relegated to what's called the alternate meal, which consists of fruits and vegetables. It's the fruits and vegetables being served on the line that day. This is based on board policy. So if you would like to see a change in that, that could be a future discussion, but it is a board policy that is set so that the maximum amount a student can charge is the value of 3 days' lunches and breakfast based on their eligibility status.
Thank you, Mr. Luca. I know we have some other people with second questions. Has anyone not spoken that would like to speak? Ms. Edmonds?
So I was actually waiting for you to take the motion and second and then discussion, but we're on a roll, so
Right.
I'll be glad to go now. I am going to be voting against the price increase today. I voted for it last year, and that was 12 months-ish ago, and I feel the fact that we're back again this year gives me a lot of heartburn. I went back and watched the work session twice. So once today, and anyway, it doesn't matter, but I rewatched it to make sure I captured everything that was discussed. You did a great job of presenting the facts to us, the data to us. I know that this is a hard thing for you to come to us with. That was very clear in everything that you said. I heard what you said about fund balance. I heard what Mr. Nieder said about fund balance. I heard what you said about the percentages that we are supposed to balance. I heard what you said about the increased food costs, labor costs, that we are already operating with a very thin CNS staff. I heard all of that. I understood all of that, understand it today in this moment. But I cannot vote to increase this again today. I cannot wait to have the discussion, the deeper dive, because I have other questions that I'm going to reserve for that time. Anyway, thank you. And I just wanted to explain to you and to all those listening that this was not an easy decision for me. I thought long and hard about it and did my research again to arrive at this decision today. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments going around the first time? Vice Chair Johnson-Hustler?
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Edmonds. I was like, I thought we were going to wait. Again, I appreciate all the comments, and again, we'll continue to give Mr. Luca the accolades, and of course, we'll continue to vote no for our increase. And again, this isn't mutually exclusive. Both of these things are necessary. But at the end of the day, families are going to take a hit. And I appreciate you saying, Mr. Luca, that your staff is trained. But we also have a subcommittee who talks about all these things all the time, which I think you all know this. But one of the things that happens is it's our daily schedule is packed. And so, yes, well-intentioned human beings have kids going through that line very quickly to expedite them in the cafeteria. And so it is often that we, board members, get the stories of people being very quick and saying, you can't have that. So while I know they're trained, the impact to a child who is experiencing that is quite stigmatizing. As we talk about this during May, the month of mental health, that is always going to be something that I speak to. If you talk about food waste, of course they're throwing away the fruits and veggies. We don't need an audit to tell you if I pick pizza and you gave me fruits and veggies, it's all going in the trash. So everything that we talked about, I could go on all day, but ultimately for me, and I do believe professional development and outreach is necessary, but the truth is we live in a country where poverty is stigmatized and oftentimes racialized, and it is inevitable that people who are eligible for this, especially those at the threshold, are not completing the forms. We've talked about this in our small groups, that the increases that we've given, rightfully so, excuse me, to our CNS workers included, have also pushed many of them over the threshold that they are no longer eligible. So I also think if this board is going to do a deeper dive, it really needs to be not on changing the lunch, but actually looking at what the ADM cost is for a family who is still in poverty by our standards of living in this community, but are not considered in poverty to be eligible for free and reduced lunch. So there's a lot of policy work, and the policy work really does think, for me personally, there are people right at that line that aren't going to qualify. I don't care how deep a dive we do as a board, that those students will not be able to afford lunch. They will constantly be they will be in a deficit, and they will be throwing away fruits and veggies. If Ms. DeLuca could change this single-handedly, she would. Right? I mean, she has given every idea known to man. She's given me every cost estimate to possibly get us there. I've worked her to the bone, and I appreciate the support. But at the end of the day, my vote is always going to be, this isn't something that you can fix. It's not something I can fix single-handedly. It's actually not something our state can fix single-handedly unless we provide free meals to all students.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. So as I have been reminded, I had not previously asked for a motion. Let me ask for a motion and a second, and then we can continue our discussion. Is there a motion at this time?
I make a motion that we adopt the meal prices for the 24-25 school year.
We have a motion for Ms. Mahaffey and a second for Mr. Hershey. All right, now for further discussion. Anyone who has not spoken yet? All right, going back around to people who'd like to speak another time on this debate, on this motion. Ms. Rice.
So I had a thought process when I came in here, but after listening to Ms. Edmonds and the fact that she voted yes last time, and here we are 365 days later, my question is, what did the department do? I heard some things that Ms. Johnson-Hostler said. What did the department do, or what did staff do to go on a campaign knowing that we are going to come back here again this year? What happened in between that time to mitigate where we are right now? Like, what initiatives are we doing? How are we really aggressively campaigning to change or even propose some of the things that Dr. Taylor is saying? He's new as well, he's new to this county and doing this, but he wasn't here last year to make the recommendation to fix it. So what is staff going to do different? If I were to vote yes, what would the staff do different than what's been going on previously to really campaign that we saw in the material that you provided, that other states that are comparable to our size and district has done to get to where they are with CEP? Like, what are we going to do different? Because I have a challenge with even, particularly my district, where you may see the largest population in free and reduced lunch. And it's fine that that happens because of other external factors, and those students' lunches will be provided for. But on a larger scale, then there are those families, we've already spoken, who may not even know that while they may not qualify for other social factors that they think are in the same line of qualifying as other social things in human services, the threshold is a little bit higher that they may qualify. But then there are those parents who barely make it in, and they still have to pay for lunch. So my question is, for me, to do what I thought I could come in here and do, is what did we do the whole 365 days to aggressively push this issue that we already had to get other families to sign up? What campaigns did we do?
Well, so we have our annual processes where we push information out to families. We send postcards out to let them know to apply. We remind them to stop in the school and pick up a paper application if they don't have access to any technology to complete an application online. I can say that in terms of the students that are certified for the CEP program. I am an active member of the Food Security Work Group of Wake County, and as a work group this last year, we've been trying to find ways we can, bring services to more students in our county. And the group has come up with we call it our one-pager, but it's an outreach to all of the community organizations to help them connect families to resources, which includes for those families who have not applied for the SNAP program or the TANF program because they think they're under or overqualified, let's say, for benefits or for the free and reduced application, to encourage them, to try to make the connections through the people that are actually working with families and other support ways. As far as what we could do going forward, we can send out more information to families again. We could ask, for partnerships with the schools to work with their families. That's really, I think, we've got to have somebody who's more at the grassroots level where the families feel like they are connected to those individuals they're working with. Because our office can keep sending information out, but if they're either not reading it or they don't feel like, they've got the capacity or the ability to apply, to qualify, they might not.
Right, I appreciate that. I think I appreciate what you said. The challenge that I have is, aren't we supposed to be the ones thinking outside of the box? Aren't we supposed to be the ones that are grassrooting it with our students? Like, I can provide Mr. Malone information, but I'm not actually showing him or forming it in a model to show that I'm not trying to take away his dignity with telling him that he needs it. So to send this form to our schools, or to send it, as everyone has experienced that's gone to schools, I'm a Wake County kid, right? So I know exactly what we're talking about. The form comes in, it's sent out, but that's just what it's done. It's just information that's sent. There's no form. How has staff tried to look outside the box to cover people's dignity for something that's so close to home, other than saying, here's a form, you can fill it out if you want, or if you don't want to get food. I'm asking for us to think outside the box, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. I am concerned that if our leadership can't do that, and we're going to leave it to other people to take care of our 159,000 students, what are we supposed to do?
So, Ms. Rice, if I could respond to that, and I agree with you that this is a case where leadership matters. And what people know is how important this is to me when it comes to school nutrition. And so this is one where I will be personally involved in terms of what we do, not only to establish a robust campaign to make sure that we go out and capture those students that would qualify. But we also look at other programs that we do have in place, like our Angel Fund. We expand those kinds of programs, that there are clear expectations to schools and principals and teachers and school nutrition programs about how we have innovative programs that increase student participation. And so I can tell you that I have some extremely high expectations when it comes to that. And I can tell you that was one of the evaluation components for me with principals. There are all sorts of things that we evaluate, but school nutrition was one of those. And so for me, it is about how we do that kind of work to ensure that everybody is on board and they're dedicated to the work in a very real way. But I also take very seriously the responsibility of the fiscal aspect of what this program means and the challenges that stand before that. The last thing I want to do is to be able to raise prices on students and families, because I know how very difficult that is. But I also understand that we have these kind of raises because the cost of business goes up. And that is the unpleasant part of this work. And I agree with you 100% that that we look at the fiscal nature, but we absolutely unequivocally take serious our job of how we support those families that have the opportunity to participate, that need their dignity preserved, and that even when we do all of that work, you're going to have families that don't participate because of dignity. Julie Pitton, who's a friend of mine, who is the teacher advisor to the state superintendent, she and I met through this work, and she was a student whose mom was a teacher in Johnson County, and they were in poverty. Well, they qualified, but for dignity's sake, they didn't. So she spoke across the state about that. That is the task, and what I can promise you is that I have a lot of expectations and a lot of experience in that area, and you will see those results.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. We'll go to Ms. Mahaffey, and then I have some remarks.
Thank you. I just reached out to Dr. Robinson and Ms. Edmonds to see if we can bring our school meals policy to our June policy committee meeting, so we can look forward to that coming, given the discussion that we've had here and hearing very clearly from Ms. DeLuca that we do have some barriers that we have created as a school board that we can address.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. I haven't spoken on this yet. What I'd like to do is I would like to ask each of you to support the increase. I know that not all of you will, but I'm going to make that ask. I think we have an obligation to keep this program solvent. That's part of our responsibilities as board members. I think, as you heard from Ms. Caulfield, her question to Ms. DeLuca, if the program continues to operate at a deficit, what happens to the program? There's a reduction in the quality or the portions of the food that's served, or we have to look at reduction of personnel costs. And I don't think either one of those is acceptable. You heard in the work session that if we run a deficit, we wouldn't immediately lay off anyone. We could use funds in the fund balance to keep someone employed, but long-term financing of the program from the fund balance is not a sustainable solution, and it's nothing that we can rely on. The fund balance that we would turn to avoid a layoff or insufficient food purchasing, we've already appropriated 50% of the fund balance to next year's budget as we've presented it, and we still don't know what our county budget appropriation will be. And we know there's an awful lot of high priority items in that request. And we're pushing for full funding of that request. We're hearing from commissioners they're challenged in granting full funding of that request. We're going to continue to ask for that, but we don't know ultimately what we will get back. If we've already allocated 50% of that fund balance to priority budget items, and then we have to dip further into that, we also have to remember that the dollar figure, the total dollars in the fund balance, are not just unrestricted funds, right? A lot of these might be funds that we're holding in reserve, but they're already allocated or restricted to specific purposes. So just when you look at the fund balance and you see a final number, that might not be the amount of dollars that are available. And then if we get to a situation where, because of cash flow issues in the district, and again, we don't know what the state budget will look like, we find ourselves without operating funds, that's a horrible, horrible financial position for this district to be in. And so, again, I don't want a deficit in the program to lead to anyone being unpaid or losing their job. And so I understand why we would dip into that fund balance to avoid that, but I think we have to look at that as an emergency situation and not as an alternative to the increase in the rate. I could go on. I don't want to dismiss, I think, the opposition that's been expressed to the increase, because I understand that's coming from a very principled place, and it addresses a lot of the problems in the system. And so I respect how you vote, but I do want to ask that this board, a majority of this board, vote in favor of keeping this program solvent, because I think the alternatives would be disastrous to the district. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Ng.
I've been thinking about it, kind of back and forth, and I remember Ms. Johnson-Hosser always talking about both and I feel like this issue, while you can aspire to a goal, aspire to fixing something that, that needs to be fixed, we can't abandon the present. And the present state of things is that, if we don't try to cover our costs, it's going to be a problem. So I think of this as both and. If we're going to present this in the policy and to work on some of these things that, then I'm all for, increasing it just so that we can move things along, so that we have some breathing room, so that we can start fixing things. And one of the things that I was thinking about was, we have a new community engagement committee. Perhaps that's something that we can involve in that committee to speak to, various neighborhoods and figure out what is it that we need to, what kind of feedback we need from the community to help us figure out how to fix this problem. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. Ms. Caulfield?
Thank you. I kind of have a two-part. For me, this dilemma that we're in is kind of like the bus driver crisis that we had, that we recognized with Learning Lab or expanded learning. And the problem that we had with that was that it affected the students directly, affected their time after school, how it affected them. So for me, I've gone back and forth on this probably 20 times each way. And I think I agree with what Chair Haggerty said. At some point, we have to acknowledge that the problem is here on the table right now. So I was actually in line with Ms. Edmonds because I felt, well, we kind of put ourselves here, and we can't put this onus on the family. But at the same point, it is affecting their family directly. So for me, I feel like it's similar to the bus crisis, but in a different level, because this is affecting the children if we don't vote for it. So I am actually going to vote tonight, a little reluctantly, because I'd like to see a different outcome. So I do have high expectations for us over the next 365 days that we will take that deeper dive. And my second part is I would like to see if when we do bring it back to policy, if we can talk, like you were speaking about, Ms. Rice was talking about professional development. It's not only sometimes the account, sometimes it's the fact that either they don't have an account or the child may bring lunch and they forget the lunch on the bus. They can tell you that has happened to me, or my kids tell me, oh, I shared my lunch because so-and-so forgot his lunchbox or left it on the playground. And I've gotten notes myself from the teacher. I had to lay money out of my pocket myself to feed your kid, please send them in. And I'm like, I had a whole meal in there. So sometimes it is not just the account, it's just the circumstance. So I would love for us to learn more in that future meeting about the angel funds and other communication things so we can have a little bit more discussion on that and learn more about it ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comment? Ms. Edmonds?
Thank you. Just for clarity, I'm not confused about the fund balance. As I said earlier, there were three options given when I asked the question during the work session. I said, what happens if we vote this down and don't increase? And it was reduce the food costs via quality, or reduce staff, go to fund balance, or go to the operating budget. So not necessarily fund balance. I just want to be clear that I've got clarity on that. As I love the suggestion of bringing it to the Community Engagement Committee in addition, to the Policy Committee. And then part of that community engagement, this is something that School Meals for All NC promotes. when families that do have the means to pay for school lunches enroll their own children in school lunch programs, it destigmatizes many things regarding school lunch. It is not just for children that need the financial assistance, that don't bring food from home. If families with means also participate with their means, I'm not suggesting, the free and reduced program, but just when they have their children participate in getting a school lunch versus bringing it from home, it helps the entire, again, to destigmatize anything about, school lunch. And so that's something to consider that I think we could take up in the community engagement piece. It's not just families that need the assistance that we need to engage. We need to engage all families on this issue, and how critical it is to the health of our district overall and of all the children in Wake County that attend our public schools. Thank you.
And to that point, we've seen research that shows that as the quality of the meal increases, so does the participation in the program. More people want the program. It expands the base of who's getting the school lunch. And school lunches do have a stigma associated with them. We know that. They're sometimes just perceived to be of lesser quality than they might actually be. And so that engagement piece is a very important piece. Mr. Nieder, I would like to call on you, though, can you explain a little bit more? I would like to go back to that work session conversation, because if I have a misunderstanding, I apologize, but I want to make sure that we are all clear on what those options were if the meal price increase did not go through. And then that relation, I heard 3 options, but I believe if you took it from that second option, the operating budget, it still comes out of the operating reserve, because we don't have an operating fund budget item for the school lunch program, and we just passed a budget that did not have it. So what would happen in that situation? Am I confused, or could we get more clarity?
I'd certainly be glad to add some clarity. I don't believe you're confused based on what you just shared, because what you just shared, I believe, is accurate. And what Ms. Edmonds just shared a minute ago about the different options for how would the increased deficit of not having this increase, how would that be funded? Because at the end of the day, it must be funded. It's required by law. It cannot go negative. So the alternatives to not increasing the price, and I'll point out, just as a side note, the increase in the price by itself will not meet all the challenges of the program, but that's for another day. The options would normally be to use reserves that would be maintained in a separate reserve within the child nutrition funds, the enterprise funds. That has already been pushed below a threshold of a 2-month reserve, which has fiscal implications. Again, I don't want to get into those today and distract, but that should be part of a bigger conversation. So the alternatives are, as Mr. Lucas shared, if there are 2 costs associated with running the program, primarily food costs, and we all know those have gone up. Labor costs, we know those have gone up by our own design and desire to pay our staff closer to a living wage. So in order to do that, we can increase prices, we can reduce the quality of food, therefore reducing the cost. We can reduce staffing levels. I don't think anyone is desirous of that. We can have this increase, which again is covering a piece of it, and then beyond that, we can look at beyond the enterprise program, which are child nutrition revenues, which consist of families that pay for their meals, as well as federal revenues that come in with the free and reduced meals that are served. We can supplement that with things out of the operating budget side of the house, and there are 2 components of that. There's the operating budget side of the fund balance, which is separate from this little reserve of 2 months in the enterprise program, and we'll have a much more detailed review of that at a future board work session. because there are many components of that. And Mr. Haggerty mentioned one component the board has invested. It's actually, I think, closer to 61% of the unassigned fund balance that's available in your proposed budget for this coming year, and you waived board policy at your last meeting in order to accommodate that, since board policy sets a threshold for investing no more than 50%, and staff was comfortable recommending that. So you could go further into that fund balance, which, as Mr. Haggerty shared again earlier in conversation, can be of great concern because it's not sustainable over time. Or we could look to the operating budget itself. And if I can speak to that a bit, the board just approved a proposed budget that they submitted to the county a couple weeks ago. And that budget included I believe it was between $62 and a $63 million increase of county appropriation. The county manager presented his proposed budget to the commissioners. I believe it was the day before the board approved their budget. And the county manager's proposed budget had a 49, I believe, and I'm rounding numbers, but a $49 million increase to the Wake County Public School System county appropriation. So there's a gap there of 14 million. We don't know if that will stay or not. The commissioners, as you heard, spoke about it. They're having public hearings. They had a public hearing yesterday, another one today. I think they have some more. They're having a work session, when I say they, the commissioners, this Thursday, where staff and leadership will actually attend. The commissioners have asked us some questions about the board's proposed budget. We provided those responses, and we'll present that at their work session on Thursday. And when the commission ultimately finalizes their budget, there may be a gap between the additional funding available in the county budget versus what's in the board proposed budget that we will have to reconcile. And if part of reconciling the child nutrition budget becomes part of reconciling the operating budget, and I'm just giving hypotheticals, if, for example, the final county budget was $5 million lower than the board's requested budget, well, that's $5 million of things that are included within the board's budget. We've got to figure out, and I'm oversimplifying, what to do without, or look at the rest of the operating budget and say, how can we eliminate $5 million of expenditures? But then, in addition to that hypothetical $5 million, if some of the child nutrition budget has to be reconciled over here, and let's say it's a couple more $1 million, that hypothetical $5 million reconciliation becomes a $7 million reconciliation against what's in the board's proposed budget. And again, I think sometimes a verbal explanation of something that's somewhat complex can be challenging. We'll be glad at a future session to maybe provide some graphic examples, and as we come back to the board with the things the board has requested related to follow-ups on child nutrition, including further engagement and strategies for enrolling families in participation free and reduced lunch programs, and further understanding of fund balance and the complexities associated with it, as well as further understanding of the actual child nutrition budget and challenges we're faced with. We can pull that all into.
Thank you. All right.
Chair
Any
Haggerty,
fun-
I have
Yes,
one
ma'am.
more question. Do we have an estimated dollar amount of what we're talking about here? I mean, I know you don't know the numbers for this current year, but what's the total that we're thinking this is going to affect us by?
The actual, if I'm understanding your question, or let me pose the question I believe you're asking. The amount of additional revenue that is estimated that will be generated through this 25-cent increase is $1.1 million for the 24-25 school year. Is that correct, Mr. Luca?
All right. If there's no further comment or further questions, all in favor of the motion to approve the recommended meal price increases for 2024, 2025, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
I heard 2. 3. Ms. Caulfield, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, and Ms. Edmonds. All right. Let me do my math. Sorry. By a vote of 5 to 3, the motion passes. Thank you. All right. At this point in time, on our agenda, we have our closed session agenda before us. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
For the statutory reasons cited. Motion from Mr. Hershey. Second from, was that Ms. Edmonds or Ms. Mahaffey? Ms. Mahaffey. All in favor of moving into closed session, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll be in closed session. We'll give everyone a minute to transition. Thank you very much.